The story of Gene Hackman's final days reads like a script nobody ever intended to write. By the time the authorities arrived, he'd been found in his secluded Santa Fe mansion, reportedly sharing the same roof as his wife's remains for an entire week. Yet the horror doesn't stop there. Official records say Betsy Arakawa was declared gone on February 11th. But on February 12th, her voice appeared on a phone call that left an entire medical clinic stunned. Were these details just random anomalies, system glitches, clerical confusion, or the opening notes to something far more sinister? Gene Hackman, a legendary actor who once gripped audiences around the globe, chose to live in near total isolation in his final years. Few outside circles knew what went on inside that carefully guarded home. Neighbors rarely glimpsed him. No housekeeper or assistant visited regularly. He'd withdrawn from Hollywood and seemed to erase his public presence, leaving only rumors behind. When the truth finally emerged, how his wife departed on one day, how she supposedly made a call the next, and how her husband lingered alone afterward, it ignited a thunderstorm of questions. Had the couple been purely reclusive, content with their own company? Or had something much darker cut them off from the world? Over the next few sections, we'll sift through the contradictory accounts, the suspicious phone call, the rare infection that claimed Betsy's life, and the massive inheritance at stake. With each new piece of information, one reality becomes harder to ignore. Something about Gene Hackman's final chapter doesn't line up. No matter which angle you take, money, family estrangement, or even potential foul play, there's a nagging sense that an unseen hand was orchestrating a grand finale more bizarre than any of his celebrated films. And what happened next would make Santa Fe's quiet hillsides echo with speculation. For decades, Gene Hackman owned the spotlight. He was the commanding force in classics like The French Connection, Unforgiven, and a parade of other iconic films. By the mid-2000s, though, he vanished from the big screen. No more premieres, no more red carpet appearances, no cameos in later Hollywood hits. It was as if he stepped off the stage and into thin air. Santa Fe was his haven of choice, a place known for its peaceful deserts, awe-inspiring sunsets, and the artistic hush that drew so many creatives. Hackman secured a sprawling home tucked beyond the high-walled gates of an elite community. Locals got used to hearing rumors of his presence, but they rarely saw him. From the outside, you'd imagine the estate as a luxurious sanctuary. Marble floors, manicured lawns, million-dollar artwork. But nobody really knew what lay behind that pristine exterior. Delivery drivers left packages at the entrance. Neighbors said their interactions rarely went beyond a passing wave, if that. In time, signs of his aging became impossible to ignore. Random tabloid snapshots showed him stooped over while shopping for groceries or fueling up his car. Each photo sparked a new wave of curiosity. Did he have a chronic illness? Why did he look so frail compared to just a few years prior? Yet Jean stayed silent, retreating further into the shadows. Unlike many celebrity spouses, Betsy Arakawa never basked in her husband's fame. A classically trained pianist, she had her own life goals and passions before stepping away from public attention to stand by Gene's side. Quiet, graceful, almost invisible to the tabloids, she was the polar opposite of the Hollywood trophy spouse cliché. After Jean's divorce from his first wife, he married Betsy in 1991, and the pair seemed content to live discreetly, defying the typical Hollywood circus, but this intense privacy came at a cost. Without children of their own, the couple effectively closed themselves off from the outside world. Neighbors barely saw them, and friends, if they existed, rarely spoke to the media. So when reports emerged that Betsy had been declared gone on February 11th, it felt like a tragic but unsurprising end to a life lived away from prying eyes. Then came the phone call on February 12th. A Santa Fe clinic insisted Betsy had phoned to confirm an appointment. The date and time were logged in the system. A doctor even claimed to have spoken to her, prescribing a follow-up visit. It wasn't a frantic call. There was no sense of crisis. Betsy allegedly sounded calm, her usual polite self. So how could a person declared departed on one day be scheduling a routine checkup the next? Skeptics proposed a glitch in the system or a simple staff error, yet the doctor and clinic staff stood by their claims. This wasn't a random misdial. They recognized her voice. She used details only the real Betsy would know. The puzzle only got stranger when she didn't show up for the appointment. Speculation soared. Could it have been someone impersonating her? If so, why bother making a mundane medical appointment? Or was Betsy still alive beyond the official date, and someone covered that fact up? Even more chilling was the absence of any big alarm raised by that phone call at the time. She didn't come in for the appointment, and life, for everyone else, simply went on. Santa Fe's desert winds carried no outcry, and no official corrected the record to say she was still with us. By the time authorities entered the house days later, the official stance remained unchanged. Betsy's date of departure had been locked in as February 11th. But behind closed doors, the stage was set for a far more disturbing twist. On February 17th, the police finally made their way through the gated entrance. The call that brought them there wasn't especially dramatic. Someone reported concerns, claiming they hadn't heard from Jean in a while and that something felt off. What they found was no typical crime scene, but more of a surreal snapshot of solitude. Gene Hackman, 95 years old and visibly frail, was discovered in the midst of this unkempt mansion. The chilling rumor that quickly spread was that he'd been coexisting with Betsy's remains for up to a week. Official documents pinned her passing at February 11th, and it was now the 17th. Did John realize what was happening around him? Did he call anyone? Did he fully grasp that his wife was gone? Reports of the interior painted a startling contrast. Dust-covered furniture, priceless art left to languish, dog waste on the floor, and a completely barren refrigerator. Despite the property's multi-million-dollar price tag, it resembled an abandoned site more than a home. People who had once admired Joan's portrayal of strong, larger-than-life characters were stunned. In real life, this once mighty figure was apparently living in neglect, either by choice or by consequence of isolation. Officially, Jean himself passed from heart troubles. Medical professionals mention how lethal such conditions can be for a man of his advanced age. Yet the stark details raised disconcerting questions. Could malnutrition, dehydration, or an untreated condition have hastened his exit? He had no caretaker, no nurse, and no family dropping by. Did he simply not have the energy or presence of mind to seek help once Betsy was gone? Some whisper that he might not have wanted help, that he'd always been a fiercely independent soul. Others suspect he had no clue how dire his situation truly was. If Betsy had been his primary caregiver, losing her might have left him helpless. But another thread of speculation persists. Did Gene Hackman himself suspect something sinister was afoot? And did he keep quiet because of fear or confusion? For now, all that's certain is that those final days were profoundly disturbing. A Hollywood icon holed up with the body of his wife, unaware or powerless to stop a tragedy from spiraling even further. And right when you think it can't get more chilling, the facts of Betsy's so-called infection turn the story on its head. Betsy's official cause of departure was a rare infection, something unlike anything typical for a person in her situation. That alone might not raise suspicions. Rare conditions do exist. But the details didn't add up. Betsy hadn't traveled to exotic locales, hadn't interacted with anyone known to carry unusual diseases, and hadn't shown the typical signs of illness that usually precede such a dire outcome. Doctors privately confided that if she'd contracted something so specialized, they'd expect it to come from a lab environment or a region where certain bacteria thrive. None of this applied to Betsy. Moreover, nobody else in the Santa Fe area showed similar symptoms. Gene Hackman, who shared the same space, supposedly remained free of this affliction. It prompted one question after another. Could this infection have been introduced artificially? That's how rumors of poisoning sparked. Could Betsy have been exposed to a biological agent designed to mimic natural disease? If so, who would do that? The mind jumps to inheritance plots, hidden foes, or perhaps unscrupulous individuals eyeing the Hackman estate. But from all we know, Betsy kept no large circle of acquaintances, and their household had no staff on the scene. So if she was indeed poisoned, it would suggest an extremely tight pool of suspects. Then there's the bizarre phone call of February 12th. If Betsy really left on the 11th, she couldn't have made that call. So if it was an impersonation, did that person also have something to do with her demise? Or had Betsy been alive through the 12th, only for her departure to be wrongly listed as the 11th? The more puzzle pieces we lay out, the more they seem to scramble into confusion. By the time anyone tried to get clarity, it was too late. Gene Hackman was discovered in such deteriorated condition that he could barely, if at all, explain what happened. No comprehensive interviews took place. The official statements merely noted heart disease or heart-related issues for his end. But those who suspect foul play find it awfully convenient that both halves of this private couple exited so close together, leaving no one who could refute or confirm these suspicious details. And that's when the biggest motive for potential foul play burst into view. Money. Specifically, the millions in Gene's will. In Hollywood law, it's no secret that big fortunes can lead to big betrayals. But Gene Hackman's estate introduced a twist that even seasoned lawyers found startling. His net worth hovered around £40 million, accrued from decades of starring roles and savvy investments. Early estate documents suggested he intended for that money to pass to his children from his first marriage. But at some point he changed course. According to the final will, everything was meant to go to Betsy. That's right. His children, Christopher, Leslie, and Elizabeth, were entirely left out. Yet there was a catch. If both Gene and Betsy departed within 90 days of each other, that entire fortune would skip to a charity. No big inheritance for any living relative. No chance for the Hackman children to claim a portion. It's not uncommon for wills to have such clauses. Often they're meant to handle situations like accidents that claim both spouses in close succession. But in this scenario, it triggered immediate controversy. The official record, Betsy gone on February 11th, Gene on February 17th. That's barely a week apart. Under the will's 90-day condition, neither spouse technically outlived the other for long enough to inherit. The entire $40 million might flow to a charitable entity. Which charity? That detail has never been fully clarified. Gene's children, reeling from the shock of losing both father and stepmother in such quick succession, asked themselves, was this truly a fluke, or was it meticulously orchestrated? Suspicion flared. Why would Gene exclude his children so completely after decades of family ties? Why place such an unusual 90-day clause in his will, ensuring that if Betsy didn't long outlive him, the kids would be denied everything? Could someone have pressured him into making these changes? And if so, did they also orchestrate Betsy's demise, making sure she wouldn't claim the money? Gene's son reportedly refused to accept the official story at face value, promptly hiring investigators to probe deeper. Early digging revealed puzzling anomalies. Large sums of money withdrawn before Gene's last days, mysterious phone calls from unknown numbers, and signatures on documents that didn't perfectly match older records. At the heart of it all was that question: who benefits if both Gene and Betsy are out of the picture almost simultaneously? And the deeper investigators dug, the murkier it became. The Santa Fe police could only do so much. With Gene Hackman's age and frailty, plus Betsy's official cause of departure being a rare infection, there wasn't immediate evidence of a conventional crime scene. No forced entry, no outward signs of violence. Yet for those convinced of foul play, the whole arrangement reeked of a carefully staged scenario. One theory points to a shadowy figure or group controlling events behind the scenes, possibly forging or influencing the will's amendments. They might have ensured Gene's isolation, persuading him to trust only Betsy, then removing her at a key moment. Once she was gone, Gene was left vulnerable with no caretaker, no daily support, and no one to question sudden decisions he might make in his confusion. Could phone calls have been intercepted or impersonated to mask timelines and sow doubt? Another angle suggests the simplest explanation, a tragic and unfortunate coincidence. Betsy contracted a bizarre infection. Gene, weakened by age and heartbreak, succumbed to heart failure days later. The phone call on February 12th might have been a technical glitch or a tragic mix-up. The disarray inside the mansion could simply reflect the couple's declining ability to manage day-to-day tasks. The 90-day clause might be a standard legal measure that, by pure misfortune, ended up disinheriting everyone in a bizarre twist of fate. Yet the swirling details, like how Betsy showed no symptoms or how large sums vanished from Gene, accounts fuel talk of a hidden puppet master. When investigators tried to piece together the final moments, they discovered that multiple bank transactions just days before Betsy's declared passing pointed to suspicious withdrawals. No one has publicly confirmed who initiated them or where the money ultimately landed. And then there's the elusive phone call that doctors say Betsy made on the 12th, at a time when she was supposedly gone. To mimic her voice so accurately, an impersonator would need intimate knowledge of her mannerisms. Or Betsy was, in fact, still alive, and the official date of her departure was backdated or falsified. Either scenario draws us back to one critical question. Why would someone do that? If the motive was money, it's unclear how that phone call fits the puzzle. If the phone call was a plea for help, disguised as a simple appointment confirmation, then she never had the chance to follow through. These unanswered riddles might have faded to rumor if not for the fact that Gene Hackman himself was found in such a dire, disconcerting state exactly when the 90-day clause threatened to funnel his fortune away. This cluster of coincidences is almost too perfect to ignore. With each revelation, the lines between coincidence and conspiracy blur. Even as legal proceedings and private investigations churn away, the world may never get definitive answers about John Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's final days. Were their ends the natural culmination of age and illness, complicated by a lonely lifestyle that shunned outside help? Or does a twisted scheme hide behind the official timelines, with hidden players orchestrating the outcome for their own gain? What lingers is a portrait of two people who had every resource to spend their last years in comfort, yet ended up in a starkly different reality. A neglected estate where time seemed frozen in disarray. The phone call from the supposedly departed Betsy will forever haunt those who try to piece this story together. If that call was genuine, it shatters every official claim. If it was faked, we're left with the burning question of who had such chilling motives. Gene Hackman's legacy as one of Hollywood's most celebrated talents is uncontested, but the final pages of his life, marked by confusion, secrecy, and shocking revelations, have become a mystery many feel compelled to solve. The 90-day clause that rerouted an entire fortune, the sudden departure of both spouses in quick succession, and the rumored tampering with official records, any one of these details could stand alone as a curious coincidence. Together, they form a narrative that's almost too wild for a Hollywood script. In the end, perhaps we're left with the simplest truth of all. Sometimes, real life refuses to wrap up neatly. Sometimes, the famed and the ordinary alike can vanish under circumstances that defy explanation. Whether the Hackman story was a tragic health crisis or a cunning manipulation, one lesson remains. Behind even the grandest gates and the biggest Hollywood names, mysteries can fester, pulling us into endless speculation about what truly happened in that sprawling Santa Fe mansion